Hi, Sandra here, the Misophonia therapist. And today's question is, why do I only get triggered by certain people making certain sounds in certain situations? And it's very common with misophonia sufferers to have a whole host of sounds that trigger them by certain people and not others. Or in certain situations, like a list of sounds in order of how intense they are, how intensely they trigger you. So, for example, somebody might find the sound of one of those concrete drillers, that the roadwork people use, even though it's very, very loud, it might only be annoying, but a more quiet sound of somebody eating or even breathing might send them into an absolute rage. So there doesn't really seem to be any rhyme or reason. And of course, it's not easy to answer the question why this happens, because we simply don't know. I can hazard my best guess, but of course it's important to remember that we are all individuals. Now, I think it's true to say that you are more likely to be triggered by people that you are closer to and people that you live with, simply because you spend more time with them. And the closer you are to people, the more likely it is that at some point they would have pushed an emotional button of yours. And of course, there are plenty of theories doing the rounds about some of the causes of misophonia. And one of those is unresolved emotion. So maybe if you're only triggered by certain people, it could be that perhaps that you have some kind of emotion that is not resolved, so you haven't fully grasped quite what it means, what it represents, or indeed let it go. And we can subconsciously harbour all kinds of emotions toward people. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of people that suffer with misophonia seem to find sounds made by other people to be worse than sounds that are just made from triggers in the environment, if that makes sense. So if another person is making the sound, that can be incredibly triggering. But if you're walking down a street and you hear a lot of noise or a lot of sounds that aren't necessarily made by other people, they might be less triggering. And of course, this is a huge generalization. I don't want to suggest for a moment that people with misophonia aren't triggered by sounds made by non-humans, because I know that people can often be triggered by the sounds that their pets make or the sound that traffic makes. So going back to my original question, why do we get more triggered by certain sounds made by certain people and not others? Why is misophonia so selective? And that is because it is a symptom. It's a symptom. I don't know any more than you know consciously why you specifically get triggered. Maybe you will never find out, but believe you me, the answer is there in the subconscious part of the mind. There would have been a time, maybe many years ago, when something happened. I don't know what. Something you perceived, something you felt, seemed to trigger a response in the brain. And often, when we get the misophonic trigger, it doesn't necessarily need to bear any direct resemblance to the thing that might have bothered you. So, for example, somebody might have developed a trigger response to the sound of their father eating soup. It's nothing to do with the father, nothing to do with the soup, nothing to do with the eating. It just so happens when the person developed the trigger, they were in bed sick with chicken pox and they were confined to their bedroom, very miserable, very stressed, very bored. And the father would sit next to their bed eating soup. Do you see what I mean? So it's nothing to do with the sound, the person making it. It's to do with the fact that that person was very, very stressed and anxious, and the brain needs to have a focus. And in this particular instance, it focused on the sound of the father eating soup. So until you talk to somebody, maybe get some help, you'll never really fully understand quite what drives your misophonia, because we are all unique. There are common themes, of course, but nobody is exactly the same. We are all different, but believe me, the answer is within you. And I hope you found this video useful, helpful, and I will be back tomorrow with more questions. Thank you. Bye for now.